Hello students, today we'll start the first topic of our syllabus, floristic regions of India, and in today's video I will explain the first part of this topic. Okay, now let us move to the first slide of this. Now since this is phytogeography, uh, we will study about plants, but then together with plants we also have to have some amount of knowledge of the geography of India. Uh, See, that's why I have kept the image of the map of India here, just to show you the geographical location in the world map, especially in relation to its latitude and longitude. Now, why this latitudinal and longitudinal position of a country or a particular place is important? Because the environmental conditions of a place largely depends on the latitudinal and longitudinal position of that place in the world map, and it is the environmental condition which is largely responsible for the kind of plants growing in a particular area. Okay, so that's why it's important for us to know about especially the latitudinal position of India. Have a look at this map. You see, roughly the India is located between almost 8 degree to 37 degree north of the equator, and we all know that from 0 degree to 33.5 degree north and south of the equator belongs to the tropical zone. 33.5 to 66.5 roughly it belongs to temperate zone, and beyond that it's the polar or alpine climate, isn't it? Now this is very interesting to see here. See, India is a tropical country, we all know that, but then you see geographically the northern part of India, it belongs to the temperate climate of the world, isn't it? That's why a pure type of tropical climate you will find in the southern India, whereas the northern part of India enjoys a subtropical or a temperate climate. Also, it is important to know that all the three different climatic zones of the world are present within our country. What are those three different climatic zones? Tropical and subtropical, tropical climatic zone, temperate climatic zone, and polar or alpine climatic zones, isn't it? Now see, this side, this area, this Deccan Plateau is mainly tropical. Okay, now this has a mixed kind as tropical, subtropical kind of climate. Also you will find alpine climate here. Now in this side, down towards the south, in the border, in the high altitude mountains, you will find also temperate climate, and in the entire stretch of Himalaya, starting from Jammu and Kashmir up to Arunachal Pradesh, you will find all the three climatic zones. The foothills and the lower elevations of Himalayas has a subtropical and tropical climate. Above this you will find temperate climate, and the high altitudinal areas enjoys an alpine or polar kind of climate. So we have all the three different kind of climatic conditions within our country. Also, the rainfall and temperature, these two are very important factor in distribution of plants. Now the rainfall varies greatly within different states of India. Temperature also varies. You start from here. Northeast India, it's famous for a very high rainfall. Average annual rainfall is above 300 centimeter per year, and you all know that the wettest place of the world, Mosiram, Cherrapunji, it has a record of 24,000 millimeter annual rainfall in the year 1974. So it has a very high rainfall and very high temperature and very high humidity area, this side. And if you move towards the western side, you will find UP, Bihar and Bengal. The rainfall is drastically reduced here. 70 up to 150 centimeter per year is the average annual rainfall here. Temperature is higher, and here temperature is even higher compared to the UP, Bihar, Bengal this side. This is a desert area, it's known as Indus Plain. Now here the rainfall is very low, 70 to 100 centimeter. Alright. Now towards the southern side, extreme southern part here, the rainfall is even lesser. It's around 40 to 50 centimeter per year. Temperature is very less. And this side temperature is high, but then rainfall is not as high as this northeastern part of India. But there are some locations like Malabar, this western Ghat range of mountains, it enjoys a very high amount of rainfall. And also you look at this Andaman and Nicobar Island, this is also a part of India. These islands also enjoys a very high rainfall. It is because of this high variation in the rainfall and the temperature within our country. The plants growing in different areas, different states are also very different. So for a phytogeographer, political divisions are not important. We have 28 plus 8, 36 total of political divisions. But then for a phytogeographer, it is not important. A phytogeographer will classify the plants based on the type of flora he or she records from those areas. Okay. So that's why different phytogeographers from time to time has studied phytogeography of India, and we will see later on within a few minutes that there are many different classification systems. So we'll follow only any one of them. In the second slide, I kept the latitude, especially to show you the latitudinal map of the globe, which we have discussed. I think it's not required anymore. Now, why should we be interested in the floristic regions of India? So you all know that in floristic studies, we study the flora of a particular study area. Flora means list of plant species growing there. Now, India is famous for its biodiversity. It's very rich in biodiversity. Now, the first important point I wanted to highlight here is that India is one of those mega biodiversity countries. This concept of mega biodiversity countries was first proposed by a very prestigious environmental NGO based in America, USA. The name of that NGO is Conservation International. It's a very prestigious one. Now they have proposed the name of 17 different countries out of 195 or 193, something like that, total number of countries of the world, which contains 70% of the total biodiversity present in this globe. Just imagine, only this 17 countries of the world contains 70% of the total biodiversity present in the world. And these countries are named as mega biodiversity countries. So two criteria a country has to fulfill in order to be honored as a mega biodiversity country. Number one is that at least 5,000 species should be present which are endemic in that country. Means beyond this country, nowhere else those species should be present. And in the border of those countries, the marine ecosystem should be present. Alright. So the position of India in the list of mega biodiversity countries is almost 9 to 10. I have forgotten exactly what is the position. It will be around 9 to 10. The top position is occupied by Brazil, okay, in terms of richness of biodiversity. Now, India has a land area of only 2.5% of the total land area of the world. But with that 2.4% of the land area, it contains 8% of the total plants and animal species, which is equivalent to 48,000 plus plant species and 90,000 animal species recorded so far. It contains 11% of the total plant species. India has 48,000 plant species recorded so far, including the lower group of plants, not only the higher group of plants, bryophyte, pteridophyte, algae, all those considered together. It contains 11% of the total plant species recorded in the world. and 6% of the total angiosperms. According to the latest data published by Botanical Survey of India in 2016, India has 18,259 species of flowering plants recorded so far. Okay, so these figures will tell you the magnitude of diversity in its bioresources in our country. Now, the second important point that I wanted to highlight is that there is something called biodiversity hotspot. This is one of the most used terminology in last 1 or 2 decades in the field of ecology and environment and biodiversity. Biodiversity hotspot. This concept was first proposed by Norman Maier, an American environmental worker and scientist. He first proposed this concept in the late part of this 20th century, and later on he modified his concept again in the year 2000. He and his team identified 25 total areas in the world which they named as biodiversity hotspots. Now, what are these biodiversity hotspots? There are 2 criteria a place has to fulfill in order to be qualified as a biodiversity hotspot. Number 1, that minimum 1500 species should be present as an endemic species in that area. Endemic species, as I have mentioned earlier, are those species which are confined to a particular area. Say in case of Meghalaya, the pitcha plant is confined to Meghalaya only, nowhere else in the world the Indian pitcha plant is found. So that is known as endemic plant. So minimum 1500 endemic species should be present in that area, plus the place must have lost 70% of its primary vegetation due to human interference, due to anthropogenic activities. Means they are at a high risk of extinction of biodiversity. So those places are termed as biodiversity hotspots. In India, out of 25 globally identified hotspots, Eastern Himalayas starting from Sikkim up to Arunachal Pradesh is considered as a biodiversity hotspot. Then Western Ghat, which starts from the southern part of Gujarat till Kanyakumari, also termed as or known as or identified as biodiversity hotspot. And our Northeast Indian states, we have 7 states. It belongs to an international biodiversity hotspot. The name of that hotspot is Indo-Burma biodiversity hotspot. So remember, Northeast India is not the name of a particular hotspot. Northeast Indian states, they belong to a hotspot which is named as Indo-Burma biodiversity hotspot. This Indo-Burma biodiversity hotspot contains a part of Bangladesh, then Yunnan province of China, then Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, and also this northeastern states of India. Okay, so these 2 points that I highlighted probably is enough to tell us the importance of biodiversity or importance of India as far as its biodiversity is concerned. Okay, now because of its richness in biodiversity, from time to time different scientists have studied the phytogeography of India. You can see here in the list there are so many, 1 2 3 4 5 6 like that. I have highlighted only the main ones, the main system, the main scientists who have studied phytogeography, but beyond apart from this also there are many others who have studied the phytogeography of India. See, as early as 1898, India was still under the colonial rule of British. C.B. Clarke studied the phytogeography of India. That time India was undivided. It was not an independent country. So you can see the names like Pegu, Ava, Malaya Peninsula, because all those areas were still under British colonial rule. Ceylon means Sri Lanka. All those also were included in the phytogeography of India. Now Joseph Dalton Hooker in 1907 classified India into this many floristic zones. India means that time the India which was under British colonial rule. Now C.C. Calder in 1937, D. Chatterjee in 1939 has divided. See, the name of Burma is here. Okay, then okay, only the Upper Burma and Lower Burma from outside our country has been included here. Now D. Chatterjee in 1960 modified his classification again after independence. So this system contains the name of places which are included within the political boundary of India only. But the system which we will follow and which is the latest one was proposed by D. Chatterjee and Mani in 1978. In this system, they have classified India into 10 different floristic zones, namely Northwest Himalaya, Indus Plain, Malabar, Central India and Deccan Plateau, Gangetic Plain, Eastern Himalayas, then Assam region, then Central Himalaya, Western Himalaya and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Okay. Now we will have a look at their locations in the map of India. First, let us start with Northwest Himalaya. Northwest Himalaya is the portion of Himalaya which belongs to the Kashmir. So here this is almost like a cold desert because of a very less temperature and very less rainfall. Next come Western Himalaya. Western Himalaya is the part of Himalaya which belongs to the Uttarakhand. Okay. Now north of UP, a portion of the Himalaya belongs to political boundary of India, that is known as Central Himalaya. It's just in the foothills of just very near to Nepal. Okay, so the portion of Himalaya which is just north of the Uttar Pradesh known as Central Himalaya. Then Eastern Himalaya from Sikkim to Nepha means Sikkim to Arunachal Pradesh. This floristic zone is known as Eastern Himalaya. Remember, we are talking about floristic zones. These are not political boundaries. Okay. So in one floristic zone, there will be 2-3 different states, or sometimes even one single state is divided into 2 or more floristic zones, depending on the type of plants. And why the type of plants will be different? Because the climatic and environmental conditions are very different within a particular state. Okay. Now Eastern Himalaya, we have mentioned about Eastern Himalaya. Then let us go to Indus Plain here. This is a desert area. This is a very dry area. So Delhi, Haryana, Punjab, Rajasthan and a part of Gujarat is included here. This is known as Indus Plain. Then comes Indo-Gangetic Plain. This is the most fertile floristic zone of India. It contains 3 states, UP, Bihar and West Bengal. Then comes Assam, the 7 northeastern states. Then comes Malabar this side. Malabar is the name which is given to the area which starts from the southern part of Gujarat, means it contains a part of Gujarat here. Then via this western ghats of mountains, it runs up to the Kanyakumari here. Okay, so this whole range of mainly it is a mountainous area. It's known as Malabar. It is, as I have mentioned earlier, this range of mountain here is known as Western Ghat, and this is a biodiversity hotspot of the world. Okay. Then comes Central India and Deccan Plateau. There are so many different states included here, starting from Orissa, then Andhra Pradesh, then Tamil Nadu, then MP will be there, Jharkhand will be there. Okay, so these are the states included here. This is known as Central India and Deccan Plateau floristic zone, the largest floristic zone in our country. Then the last one, the floristic zone number 10, is the Andaman, which is actually composed of 527 different numbers of different size small islands together comprise this floristic zone. This is also very rich in biodiversity, and there are some accounts where they consider this Andaman and Nicobar Island as one of the biodiversity hotspot, but not according to the Norman Mayer's system of classification. Okay, so in our classes, in our topic, when we discuss, we have to discuss about the plants which are growing in each one of those different floristic zones. So as I have mentioned earlier in the first video, that it's going to be very long, but then we also understand at undergraduate level we need not to cite the name of 100 plant species growing in a particular area. Okay, so we will try to minimize and we will try to simplify it, but then at least 4 or 5 different names of plants from each one of those floristic zone we have to remember. Okay, so that's all for today. In the next class we'll continue. We will start discussing the first floristic zone, Northwest Himalayas. Okay, thank you very much.